What game reveals would have made the PS5 Pro reveal an insta-buy for you? If they'd announced Bloodborne Pro or something like Resistance Trilogy Remake, I'd likely have dribbled all over my keyboard while trying to place my order. Be interested to know what games would have had a similar effect on you wonderful specimens. Well, this is an interesting thing. I think what Cookie McCrumble here is trying to do is suggest that there could have been an elevated level of interest by actually having a great game reveal in concert with the hardware reveal, which typically didn't happen with PS5, for example. But maybe, bearing in mind the challenges facing this one, having some kind of software reveal would have helped. Oliver, any thoughts on this one?
Well, if we're talking about games from last generation consoles, last generation consoles possibly, I'd think like there are a lot of great PS3 titles that I love to see, like the Nathan Drake collection that's on PS4,
Yeah,
but
sure.
it could be 4K 120 on PS5 Pro, Motorstorm Collection, Ratchet and Clank, God of War, lots of older franchises that either aren't on more modern platforms or are on more modern platforms in a somewhat compromised form. In terms of new titles, I'd love to see what Naughty Dog is cooking up. I'd love to see, I don't know, just wish casting a new Persona game on Unreal Engine 5 with top of the line visuals. I mean, if I'm just throwing things out there that won't happen. But, there are lots of games out there that I'd love to see for PlayStation 5 Pro. I trust they'll be revealed in the fullness of time, possibly later this year. And I would hope that those titles are shown off in such a way that doesn't just homogenize the consoles into one kind of PlayStation platform, but actually does show off some of those differences so we can get a bit of a flavor for how the console's being exploited in games that are presumably being designed to some large degree around this new hardware.
Mm-hmm. Alex?
I feel like they could have trotted out something that was not possible before. I don't think they're going to do something like Cyberpunk path tracing. I just don't think the performance is probably there based upon what we've seen so far. But I feel like they could have been a bit more like the Hogwarts one was really just like, I know it's a really popular game, but like it did nothing for me in terms of like visuals. Like they showed it at 30 FPS. Like they could have replaced that with something, maybe if they said like we theorize like, oh, Alan Wake 2 could be having RT reflections, and those are like really good ones, or there's been other titles that have released on PC since the PS5's release where the PC version had more transformative ray tracing. You have things like Dying Light 2, which does run on RDNA 3 cards reasonably, and it should run even more reasonably on RDNA 4. What about Dying Light 2 with a ray tracing suite at 30 FPS, showing that off versus they're just like the reluctance to show it off next to the PS5 version of the game looking actually not too great, I feel like is part of that. But I feel like they really should have chosen the eggs that they put in that basket a lot better for that initial reveal. And I really do think it was way too short. They should have spent way more time on the upgrades because it was so streamlined and fast. Like those Ratchet and Clank differences that they showed off, the Spider-Man ones, I think they're like on a screen for a total, if I look at my timeline, like 2 seconds.
Right.
Like I'm looping those 2-second clips here. Like I feel like our videos try and labor the differences better.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. Well, this is a tricky one, isn't it? Because you could have added star appeal to this presentation by having a great new, fantastic new game, and you'd have shown it running on PS5 Pro looking fantastic. But then obviously the question would have been, well, it's got to come out on base PlayStation 5 as well. So when are we going to see that? And you certainly can't differentiate too much between PS5 and PS5 Pro because the majority of the users are on the base PS5. So it's certainly a tricky one. And maybe they just don't have a game yet that is, first party in nature that does actually put the upgrades through their paces and, produces a measurably different experience. There's an easy way you can do this, to sort of set Pro apart from the base PlayStation 5, which is to be, to have like a Pro specific mode. that's you'd have the PlayStation 5 roads as well. You'd have a Pro specific road which specifically targets the features of the Pro and the strengths of the Pro. But I think based on Sony's first party timeline, they probably don't have a game yet that actually can do that. And the third parties would have had even less time with the hardware, unless, they camped out at CD Projekt Red and said, okay, let's do something special with Cyberpunk. That clearly didn't happen. And there is already something really special with Cyberpunk, but it's happening with NVIDIA. I think they're caught between a rock and a hard place, really. And maybe there will be game reveals. There's still the second part of the prophecy, which is that, first of all, there would be a reveal, and then there would be a state of play. And we've still got the 30th PlayStation anniversary celebrations to kick in. Maybe it's just part of the timeline, part of the pipeline, before we sort of see more. That would kind of make sense, right?